There we are then. So, we have just watched the documentary The Ballad of Bessie Mae from director Oliver Guy Watkins. How was that seeing that up there today?
Interesting, actually. It's the third time I've seen it in the cinema now. And every time it's felt very different, which is actually really nice for me, because the first time I watched it, it felt like it moved in. It felt like I was in there for 5 minutes watching it, and today it felt like I was watching it for 3 hours. And I think that's actually something that's really beautiful about this for me. So it was really nice to watch it in this environment again, because this place I was here in 21 and. Being back in Romford and having the film screen here is important to me. So yeah.
Well, we're happy to have it. As a bit of a nerd myself, I like a bit of this LARPing malarkey. I find it quite fascinating. But you kind of went a different way with this one. Whereas most things would tackle this subject, they would show people reenacting and doing all that kind of thing. You decided to show the build-up, the creativity, the people behind it, and what it takes to make it. Why was that?
There's a very practical reason, and then there's a filmmaking reason. So the practical reason is it was filmed in the summer of 2020, and LARPing was not allowed in the summer of 2020. So instead of them actually being able to do anything, they were building a new environment for them to play in. And that's what we film, is the building of the environment, or the demolishing of some parts and the building of others. The idea was always that we would go back and film a LARP when they were allowed to do a new LARP. But because of things that happened both in the real world and in my life, not that my life isn't the real world, but because a lot happened, the feeling was better to keep Nicole, who's the lead lead focus. It is almost like she's an actress at this point, though, in the LARPing world alone. So we took her back to the environment, and we filmed the scenes where she's in character, just with her in the space, because it felt like that mirrored what was happening in all of our lives around 2020, really.
I quite like the way you did it, because it makes us feel like we're part of their process when they're rebuilding and deconstructing. Like it makes it feel that way. Is that something you really wanted to try and convey?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is it would have been very easy to edit that footage into a 20-minute, 30-minute short that said these guys went to build a new environment. It didn't work out. Then they went off and had a LARP somewhere else. It would have been really easy to kind of make that. But what actually happens is that this group of people, led by Nicole and Chris, go to an environment that they've poured their heart and soul into, that they've really decided they're going to change their lives and do what they love permanently and set up this new environment. And it doesn't work out. And there's so much hard work that is involved in building this environment for themselves, that what I wanted to do was create the feeling that the viewer, or when you're watching this, you feel like it's hard work to watch it. Like, so rather than me saying to you, look, this is really hard work, this is the obvious shit that happens, I want you to sit in the seat and in the cinema and think, wow, this is really difficult to watch. Like, why am I watching someone essentially garden for 20 minutes? And I want you to have to see that, because it's repetitious, and therefore you feel like you're in their environment. You feel like you're doing, like all of us do mundane stuff every single day to achieve certain things. And it's really important, I think, that when Nicole eventually gets emotional, or when they are separated from the site they've been trying to build and gone back to their old site to try and recuperate, that you can then, you're allowed to feel, then you're allowed to feel with them, or rather than feel by yourself in the seat. And I think that's an important thing for me.
Have you ever tried LARPing?
No. Originally, there was also a discussion. I was quite obviously all of us thought about different things in Corona,
Yeah.
and the discussion was I would put myself in a LARP with Nicole, and then we would do this quite meta thing with that. And I'm quite glad that never happened, in all honesty.
But after spending time watching what they do and get into it, do you think you could get into that world and be part of that world?
No.
No.
No, I don't. I mean, in a way, being a filmmaker, I am part of the world of filmmaking, and that is exactly what they're doing with LARPing. I am making film because I want somewhere to put all the feeling and emotion that I have inside of me that I find hard to contain on a daily basis. They go and LARP on us for a week in May. I nearly said on a Sunday afternoon, and I think that's disrespectful. But they go away to these places because they want to connect with the side of themselves that they feel comfortable portraying in that environment.
So after making this and spending all that time with them, can you understand why they do it and why there's such a hardcore
100%.
base for it?
Yeah, 100%. That I always knew from the start, actually, and that's kind of what I wanted to focus on. So many LARP documentaries, if you watch them, are almost portray people as nerds or geeks, like, you know. And I don't
I'm going to say like me there.
well, well,
Thanks.
I was going to say like you said earlier, yeah, and I think that's unfair. I think that is unfair. It's people with a passion that find a space that makes them feel comfortable, and that, to me, that is more important.
What was the most surprising thing that you came across while filming this?
Yeah, that's surprising. I think actually the process itself was surprising, because a lot of it was made at distance with different people doing different tasks. So I wasn't present for a lot of the filming because of Corona, and I live in a different country and I couldn't travel. So a lot of it was being directed over the telephone. I would have John would put a phone next to the camera, my cameraman, and he would film a scene, and then I would say, especially with the LARP stuff we did towards the end, the actual LARP, and I would say, no, can we actually get Nicole to do this? Or and then I would get sent rushes from the site every day, and I would go through and say, okay, so we need to focus on the kids tomorrow. We don't have enough footage of the kids and or the community around Chris and Nicole. So can we pull back a bit from the focus tomorrow? So we've got more there. So I think the surprising thing for me was learning what I wanted to see in that environment without having the immediacy of having to make a choice.
So we're going to move on to some Q&A, some questions from the audience. Do we have anything out there from anyone?
I've got a quick question, and that is, having spent about 150 hours with you in a foreign client, how come you never ever mentioned this film? Because you've already shot it,
Yeah.
and it just makes me wonder how many films you sit on before you actually finish them. And that's not me being disrespectful, that's, it's like, you didn't mention this film to us at all, or did you mention it to you? So it just makes me wonder how many projects you kind of sit on and polish and then get out, and then what drew you to this initially?
Drew me to the film. Yeah, interesting. In that case, I should just tell you I have just finished another film. Maybe. No, this film was made over a series of events in the world and for myself personally that made it very difficult to be a filmmaker. And it took me a long time to finish this film for a lot of different reasons. And I think at the time that we went, I'd filmed the location scenes at that time. I hadn't filmed the LARP scenes. And I kind of knew what I wanted to do with it, but I wasn't sure. And in fact, every step of this film has followed a path of things that have happened for me that mean there's a very deep feeling connection with this film in many different ways. And I probably haven't been too prepared to talk about it too much. Also because life has been more important to me than being a filmmaker for a period of time. And I think maybe that's the reason I haven't spoken about it. The other thing is that now where this film sits with me and sits in what's happened, I don't think it will have much. I think I know where I want it to live, and I don't think I want it to be too readily available. So it will probably screen. It will screen at one more film festival, and then we may close the door on this film as well, I think.
Sorry, if I'm in that, but so when did you first become aware of all this subject matter, and what sort of like drew you into it?
Like the film I made about James Payton, who's over there somewhere, I think, unless he left. Hi, James. It was through someone I know, and I knew Nicole, and she actually, I know her because she makes costume for the film industry. So she designs lots of period piece costumes. She does things like The Witcher or Game of Thrones and things like that. And Nicole had told me about her LARPing lifestyle. And one day on a film set, I think, or a particular job, she had shown me some videos, and I became quite interested in what they do, but also mainly because I knew Nicole, and I knew how LARPing would be important to her life, as we discussed earlier, about having a passion and a place to put your fears, anxieties, and to process those in a world that you can create, and how important that is. So I think that was what attracted me to making the film.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
There's lots of questions.
This is the titular James Payton, by the way. Everybody, round of applause for this man.
Are you stealing my thunder again? Spent my life in your shadow.
What I was really noticed about the movie is it's incredibly zen. I found it incredibly zen. You sort of get lost in the world. There's not a lot of talking. You sort of let the pictures tell the story. And in that, there's a sort of relaxation to it, even though they're doing all this work and repetition. I wonder if is that something you found after the event during the edit, or was that a plan going into the movie at the beginning?
It was a plan going into the edit, but that was created as a team with other people as well, and I wanted more responsibility in the edit than I'd had in this with previous films, but I certainly did not do that alone. For me, this film was important to become something where I used what I knew about film, or what I've made up until this point, as a transition to really trying to find feeling in a film and stop just telling a story. And I think it's gone fully the other way, and maybe now I've taken a few steps back from that in what I've made since. But it was really important to understand the power of finding feeling within film and within myself in that process as well. So yeah, I think that's probably what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Anyone else?
That's the most exercise you've done in many years, Spence. Hi.
I was wondering, have you seen Gene Gilman, the actor? So
Yeah.
I was going to ask whether that kind of film, or that style, kind of repetitiveness and kind of everyday mundaneness, was that influence?
Yeah, it was. And actually, it's very funny you should say that, because it was the last film I watched before I went in to edit this. I was taken there by the person that I was editing with and producing with at the time, and she introduced me to that world, and it was something that, like I saw a few people in this room today when they were watching the film, that felt very, you feel very awkward, and you're in a position where you have to disconnect from the fact that film should entertain you, and that you have to really let your thoughts kind of wash away and then just allow yourself to be in the feeling of the film and you. And I think, yeah, certainly watching that film, I probably protested massively about having to see a 4-hour film, especially as I think there weren't subtitles in the version that I watched. So I watched a 4-hour film that I couldn't really understand, but I understood the feeling in it, and that was vitally important for this and for my filmmaking as a whole. And I think it's also really important to say on that note that what influences you, or what changes your perception of how you make something or do something, changes throughout your life. And when something like that film, the Chantal Akerman film that you just mentioned, comes to you, then it does change your perception of how things should be done. And I think that is consistent. I've recently actually rediscovered Lost in Translation, the Sofia Coppola film, and I've probably watched that 10 times in the last year. And I think at the moment that the feeling within that film has sat so well within the feeling of my life as well. So it's very, very apparent. And I think that's affecting how I produce film now as well.
Anybody else have any questions? Oh, one over here.
Hi.
Aside from like COVID, was there any other like kind of challenges that you faced while in filming?
Yes. There were a lot of challenges. I had some issues with my mental health during the period of making this film, which is what I alluded to just now with Spencer. And I have, during the making of this film, been through quite an intensive process to restore that at the same time. And I think that was why this film becomes quite difficult for me to watch sometimes as well. I'm in a very different place now, but it has not been a very easy journey. And I think that being able to see that in the film without it being said obviously actually has just reinforced to me today how important that is as well. So there's a little bit too much honesty maybe on my part in the answer of that question, but thank you for asking it.
So one.
Oh.
So I found that all really interesting. I thought you alluded earlier to the idea that those tools and it's quite a long film. And hopefully, I think it wouldn't sit with like a standard audience. But yeah, I really appreciate that about it. But assuming you're making it in the same way, what would you change? What if anything you were to approach it again? If you could go back to filming again in the same way, for the same kind of feeling? Is there anything that could be like a technical thing, or just something you wish you could have shot, but you missed it?
I think in my wildest fantasy, I would shoot a full up after the end credits. So I still would want the film to kind of sit in the way that it stands, but I love the way that end sequence climaxes up with Nicole running through the woods. And I think if I had any kind of like ... fantasy with the end of that scene. She would run from being in a very isolated place into a crowded group of people into a full-on battle scene, and then out the other side of that. And I think that it would be very quick and simple, but that would essentially be it. Because I think the one thing that the film does with Nicole as the pivotal kind of character, or Bessie Mae as her LARPing persona is give her this the world revolving around her situation. And what is missing maybe is the chaos of seeing that kind of happen. So yeah, maybe I would have like a very short sequence that just illustrated that chaos as well. Thank you.
And with that, thank you so much for submitting the movie. Thank you for letting us show it today. Thank you for being here and sharing some open and honest thoughts.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Romford. This is a great event. And I love what Spencer, Peter, Natalie, yourself, and everyone else. Oh, Bradley as well. He'll get upset if I forget him. And Louise. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.